Well, I talk about the beneficiary liquidity plan being the final piece to the financial plan. Because a lot of people, they'll even go to the point to say, well, Phil, I have a trust. Great. Is there a funeral and expense section of your trust? Well, yeah. I said, well, flip to that. And they'll flip to it, and it'll usually have some words that talk about who's supposed to kind of be in charge. They'll talk about, money, but nowhere does it say this is where the money should come from. And so even though they've spent thousands of dollars to put a living trust or revocable trust in place, it doesn't give them it doesn't give the family access to money. And so
it does not, right.
This is that final piece, which that's also why you and I work with so many estate planning attorneys, is they're adding the beneficiary liquidity plan on as the final piece to that estate plan or that financial plan. So you and I typically work either direct with consumers, with financial advisors, insurance planners, funeral homes, and estate planning attorneys, because we're that missing piece in most of their plans that make it actually work.
Right. And I think for the consumer, it is just for those professionals too, right? Like it's an easily avoidable topic, because we're talking about making things smooth in the transition of death with an estate planning attorney. That's what people want. Like, all my stuff's taken care of, but I don't want to really talk about the actual cost of me dying.
Right. Because all that does is avoids probate, helps with estate taxes, make sure that your money is dispersed to your families or charities or churches the way you want. But everybody forgets, well, what about the first expense that I have? And that's the funeral or the cremation and the celebration of life and those other bills for the first 60 days until we can start implementing all those other things. Everybody forgets that part. Or let me rephrase that. They don't know it's a problem until it's already a problem.
It's true. And yes, short answer is yes. And I work with some tremendous estate planning attorneys. And I started to try to re-educate even some, like, back, because I've learned a ton from them on process, and I am not an attorney and don't claim to be, but I've tried to do my best to say, look, with this big binder that you've given them, you've done such a great job making sure that nothing goes wrong should one of them die or both of them die at the same time, right? But at the end of those binders, there's 3 pages that says, funeral plans or, prearrangement, and it's 95% of the time left blank.
Right.
So it's no wonder that we have this vacuum period that I've been talking about. The estate is nicely, tightly wrapped, not accessible until we start administering the estates. A lot of times, obviously, we can't do anything without a death certificate, right? We haven't even covered that. A death certificate could take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks to get, depending on where you live in the U.S., right? So with BLP,
let's transition into that then, John, and we'll transition into the death certificate, and then I want to talk about what typical expenses look like, because I know that you're deeply involved in the average cost. But so you got 20 years experience in the funeral homes. You've worked with thousands of funeral homes. What is your experience with how long it takes families to get certified copies of the death certificate? Because, to be honest, I get pushback sometimes from people saying, oh, I can get it in a couple days. It's not a problem. I'm not worried about that, Phil. But all my research shows that that's not the case. So what's your experience in the funeral business on families getting certified copies of the death certificate?
So let's even just use 2020 as an example of how things have changed. So with COVID and the pandemic, we were seeing death certificates be out 2 to 3 months in the Metro Detroit area, just because of no one was reporting to work, right?
Right.
So there was a lot of that. And then what they've realized is, obviously now with less workers and things like that too at the county building, and things being not really fully open here with staff. So we're seeing timelines just continuing to be longer. And I would say 2 days would be a miracle to have a certified death certificate. Because here's the thing, when someone dies, let's think about the timeline, right? Death call comes into the funeral home, and we take that call, and we are honored to care for that family, and we take that deceased into our care. Deaths occur 24 hours a day, right? It could be 2 in the afternoon or 2 in the morning, and we're responding in the place of death within an hour. That person comes into our care. Maybe the family meets us in the morning, maybe they don't. So now we're 2 days, let's say more than likely, if it's an evening death, we're meeting that family not the next day, but the following. So now we're gone by 2 days already past death, right? We're arranging services in that arrangement conference. We're getting all of the vital statistics to then submit the death certificate to the doctor, right? Now, I don't know about you, but doctors and schedules and trying to get them to sign a specific document, not to mention to be to pull the file at the doctor's office to see exactly what the conditions were, to list the cause of death and causes accurately, license number, sign off. That takes time.
Right.
We've waited on doctors' offices for days, right? So once we get that signed copy, we then have to review it. Family reviews it, signs off on it. We take it to the county clerk, file it, get the certified copies. Or now electronically, we're submitting that to the counties.
Yeah, everything I see is electronically now. It
Yeah.
looks like.
Yep. So, which you think would speed up the process, but we have just seen, lag time. So if people are expecting to get their death certificates immediately, I hate to say to be another bearer of bad news, that things will continue to be slower in that department. And a lot of times people will need a certified copy. Some people will need just a photocopy. So it's no telling. I mean, things could be way different in Los Angeles County than they are Metro Detroit, and New York City is a whole lot different than, Baltimore County. And, I'm just speaking on kind of Midwest, but it is certainly not 2 days. I would say it's more realistically now like 2 weeks to 4 weeks to get things. And that's just to get the death certificate. You haven't started on any things that go along with that, right?
Processes or anything else. Well, if you go to Texas Public Health and Human Services website, right online, for electronic processing, it's 25 to 30 days minimum, right on their website.
There you go.
Connecticut, I believe, last time I looked, was 6 to 8 weeks.
Sure.
Right on their website. And I think everybody thought electronic processing was going to be quicker, but I think the reality of it is it actually is delayed it a little bit more than, waiting at the clerk's office and just standing there.
I would agree.
In your state's capital,
right?
And saying, please certify this. Like, that's not even an option anymore.
No, I mean, and a lot, like you said, some of these buildings you can't even get into right now across the U.S. It differs where you're at, right? So do not.
They'll probably never go back to in person, though. It's like once people go electronic, then they don't need all the employees. Like, our whole country's kind of moving that direction of less in person and more electronic.
Well, and the closest thing to in person that they have now here locally is they will tell you when the death certificates are ready that you can pick up in there in a file in the lobby. So, just less human interaction. Come in, drop your check, get your death certificates. But that is not happening in 2 days, and it's not happening in 4 days. It's not happening in 5 days. It's happening over the course of weeks.
Excellent. And again, I come back to the Beneficiary Liquidity Plan does not require a death certificate to release those funds. Correct. Except in the states of Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, and Massachusetts. Little asterisk there. Every other state, no death certificate. And because these families aren't buying more inheritance, it's simply moving money from the left pocket to the right pocket. We eliminate all that because you didn't even get into what if there's an autopsy? What if it's an accidental cause of death? It could be months. So we just eliminate all that. And we tell people, like, why risk it? Why make this hard for your family when it's already probably one of the hardest days in their life? And I ask people, I'm like, you're leaving your family an inheritance, right? Something. Well, yeah. And you're going to want them to use part of that money to cover these expenses. You don't want that to be a burden, right? No, of course not, Phil. I don't want to be a burden to my family. Well, then if it doesn't cost you anything to guarantee it's not a burden, Why wouldn't we put a beneficiary liquidity plan in place? We can literally do it over the phone. Everybody qualifies as long as you're not 100. So as long as you're not triple digits in age,
Right.
you could be in a nursing home, in hospice, and still qualify to put a plan in place. It's not too late unless you've already passed. Using the money you've already earmarked for your family, so that on one of the worst days of their life, the day you pass away, it's not a burden. Why would you not fix it if it's that easy to put a plan in place?
It's really that simple. And that's where I think where you and I every day talk to these professionals that do an outstanding job to fold this conversation in. Look, there's going to be this vacuum period. We've learned that this plan can really eliminate that. And we're looking to help you with that. And this is how we intend to do that. So that's where I love doing these things with you to further educate our fellow professionals that this, because there's a lot of, just as families don't know these exist, right? I think there's a fair amount of our fellow professionals that don't realize a plan like this exists. And whether it's you, myself, or that attorney or that financial planner that's spreading the message, we need to do more of this.
Absolutely.